Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I have a returning guest. His name is Mr. Mitch Russo. And the reason I asked Mitch to come back is because I wanted to talk. One of the ways to grow your company is to increase the number of your salespeople, but not necessarily internally paying salaries and things for salespeople. And Mitch has a really unique spin on how to do that. It's under certification and under licensure. And so I thought it'd be a very interesting topic for those of you who are open-minded, because it'll allow you to drive more revenue in your company. And why I say open-minded is because a lot of times people are thinking, man, this couldn't work for my industry or my company. And what I found is there's variations that work for pretty much any industry or any company. Not 100%, as Mitch describes, it's not for everybody, but I really think you're going to get a lot out of this episode. We're also talking about a software that Mitch developed on the front end. I'm certainly plugging that software. And the reason I'm doing that is I've actually reviewed the software, and the software is really cool. Check it out. And if you have any questions, certainly contact Mitch, and he'll go from there with you. That's it. Let's go to the interview and talk to Mr. Mitch Russo. Hey, Mitch, welcome to the call.
Hey, Doug, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Oh, it's great to have you. You're my first return guest, actually, ever. So for those of you listening, please pay attention, because I don't invite anybody back just for, the fact of just trying to fill a spot. So Mitch and I have worked together for years, and he was the CEO of a company called Business Breakthroughs International, and I was the president of sales and training, I guess would be my title. And so I basically worked for Mitch, but I learned a tremendous amount from Mitch about how to grow companies. And I think you're going to learn a lot here. We're going to talk about increasing the number of sellers that you have for your company. But one of the things I want to do right out of the gate, Mitch, if you don't mind, is you have a software background. You wrote this really and employed this really cool software called, is it Clientfolio? If I got it right?
Clientfolio, correct.
And it's a great service for anybody who's coaching or consulting people. But I also see there's a really cool bunch of features there that people who are selling could use as well. It's not just like, hey, this is a coach software or a consulting software, but it's a software that I think people can really track and be much more productive on their conversations and things that's going on. Because, I know from being a sales person, most of my life, heck, I get in 17 directions, per week, and I forget stuff. And I'm like, oh, then somebody calls me out of the blue. I'm like, oh, what was my conversation with them before? Or what was the note that I had before? Or like, oh my gosh, in fact, I had it happen to me this week, embarrassingly enough, but that does happen. And your system seems to pull everything together for people. Do you want to kind of give an overview and
sure.
We can talk?
So the name of the software is Clientfolio. That's spelled clientfol.io. I was trying to get the cool factor there with the .io extension and actually make it a word. And I did it, which is fun. But here's the reason I wrote it. The reason I created Clientfolio is because I needed this to track my conversations, to make sure that the people I'm talking to got what I promised to send them, to even make records of all of these conversations and create a way for me to rapidly move from session to session or call to call without doing a lot of admin. That's why I built the system. I tried as many other solutions as I could figure out, And I found everything else like this to be far more expensive, far harder to use, and far too cumbersome to make real use of. I released this product in March. We have done a new feature release every 2 weeks since March. The system is amazing, and it can accommodate unlimited clients for every single individual who's using it. And you could add coaches or add team members for just $20 per month per team member. So it's very economical as well.
Extremely economical, and the ROI is immediate because one lost sale is, worth, way more than that to most people. And, Mitch, you might appreciate this. I was just on a consulting call. I was invited to a sales consultant call, and this gal came on and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I just lost a sale." And I'm listening, and I'm like, I'm a guest on there listening. And
Right.
She goes, "I lost the sale because I didn't put a note in the system to follow up with somebody. And guess what?" And so she goes through the numbers. Well, long story short, it was a $250,000 annual commission on a recurring product that average lifetime value was 5 years.
I'm starting to cry here. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I was shocked. But for $20 a month, she could have had that notation in there, and she would have got the same. And the saddest part about it is the client was actually looking for her, but couldn't find it, but then found another distributor of the product and bought it off the distributor, the other one.
Happens every day. And, it's worse for, when you have a client relationship. If you don't stay on top of that relationship, no matter what it is, whether you're in sales or consulting or training or even a therapist, you don't keep track of this stuff, you're not going to get the kind of results that you promised. That's why it's so important to have a system to do all of this for you.
I firmly agree. And I remember the old days when we used to keep stuff on spreadsheets, before CRM. So that's how old I am. I remember, getting a call from somebody one time, and they started talking to me about this and that and this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't remember. I'm looking for my file card to figure out, who is this, conversation with this person? What is it? Because I used to write them on note cards back then. And lo and behold, I didn't have it. And, I did make the sale to my credit, but, I had to do a lot of backpedaling and try to figure out and stay as open and evasive as possible to the conversation. And if somebody's selling, you don't want to do that. It's that simple. You want to be able to relate immediately to what they're saying. And when I remember looking through your system, I mean, you can go in there and just click on something and bam, up come the notes. And then, I have relevant conversation, notes, recordings, all kinds of stuff in there. It was really cool.
Well, check it out. I mean, I think listeners, I think you're going to love it. If it fits your needs, by all means. And here's the other thing, Doug, you know this about me. I never stop improving the products that I create. And if you become a Clientfolio subscriber and you need something and it's not there, let me know. Who knows? It might be there the next day. Just tell me and I'll do my best to add it for you.
That's awesome, Mitch. Thanks for doing that. It's not only are you a software guru who built a company and sold it, I think for 10 million, if I remember correctly, back in the days, a little more than 10 million. Sorry, I clipped you for some millions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that was back also when an 8-figure business was worth a heck of a lot more than an 8-figure business today.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Sure.
I mean, in today's numbers, we got to at least double or triple those numbers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, you started that up from scratch, basically on an idea, and you self-funded it for the most part. And I remember talking to you about this, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about on this podcast with you was, how do you increase the number of sellers for your company, but do this at a cost-effective manner? And you were doing this like a genius back then, before a lot of people were even doing this in the software business, where you were building out, I would say, certification or partnerships or something of that nature. I've talked a lot about building agencies, which is, getting a bunch of people to sell your stuff and paying them a commission, right? But you don't have to come out of pocket for it. And I know right now you also specialize in licensure and certification and helping people. And I think it's called Power Tribes, if I remember it correctly. Is that the right name?
It should be right here. Yeah, Power Tribes. Right.
Power Tribes. So check it out at Power Tribes. I know you've helped a lot of notable people take this concept and employ it into the business. Can you talk about why is it so important to get more people? I mean, it seems obvious, but why is it more important than ever to get people out there selling for you and moving your product or service through and reducing your overall sales cost, right? I mean, really, when it comes down to it,
Sure.
Could you speak to it?
Yeah, well, let's reference a book that I think most of us have read at some point in our lives. It's called Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Mm-hmm.
So in The Art of War, what he talks about is how to win a war. Well, Doug, you and I, and probably everybody who's listening in on our call today, is in war with the forces around them that are trying to make them fail. That's the government, that's the tax system, that's your competitors, and who knows. But bottom line is this: if you don't have a sales force, then you don't have a company. And if you do have a sales force, the success of that sales force is basically the success of your company. But here's the problem. Building a sales force is expensive. If there was a way to build a sales force, not for free, even better, where the salespeople pay you to sell your product, I would imagine that you'd want to do that. Would that be right?
Well, tell us more, Mitch, because I know what's coming. So,
Right. Well, so this is what the whole idea behind creating certification is. So certification means that I have trained somebody and I've indoctrinated them into the processes that I myself do. So it's like I create clones of myself. And if I were, in this case, in technical support or in sales, I would create clones of myself. And then I'd deploy those clones all over the world, and I'd have them do what I do. Well, there's 3 separate components of how to do that. The first is the training environment. We have to make sure that the training that you take someone through delivers 100% competence. Now, I was very lucky, Doug, because as you know, I helped Tony build his own program, the training program he built. We set that up with Lightspeed VT some years ago. But the side benefit that I didn't even know I was getting was that Tony taught me about how people learn. And once I understood that, it was like a huge aha moment, because if you do those specific things that people need in order to learn, then the bottom line is that you have trained them to 100% competency. Well, we do that. And I work with my clients to take them through that entire process. So that's basically step 1. Step 2 is if they're going to pay you $10,000, $20,000 a year to be certified, they're going to need an ROI. Now, we know lots of people who sell coaching certification for $10,000, $20,000, and there is no ROI. You get a beautiful certificate that I could put right here behind my Zoom window and show you that I'm certified in, who knows, anyone you can imagine, some famous coach's techniques. But what we do instead, we don't necessarily give you a certificate. That's not important. Instead, what we do is we give you clients and we give you leads, and we build a system that you can immediately step right into and create new clients with. Now, if we do our job and you pay your money, our goal is to get you 5x to 10x return on your ROI. Well, how do we do that? Well, that means that we have to take some of the money you paid us and we have to use that to create lead flow for you. But here's the nice thing about it. When you have 10, 20, 50, as I did, 350 people paying you $10,000, $20,000 a year, even 15% of that is enough marketing to really get a group started and moving. Now, that's only one thing that we do to bring leads in. The second thing we do is we hire an internal PR executive, a PR, actually, to tell you the truth, it's a PR intern, and we train them on how to get speaking engagements for our certified consultants or coaches or whatever name we want to give them, certified partners. Now, at this point, they're sitting around booking speaking engagements locally for our members. And out of the blue, they might get a phone call and say, oh, so Bob, are you busy Thursday night? Can you speak to the Los Angeles Bar Association on what it is that you do? And of course, you'll be mentioning Clientfolio or our products or whatever they are. And Bob will say, well, hell yeah. Are you kidding me? I'd love to. Because that's free. They didn't do anything to get that. They didn't even know it was coming. These are the sort of upside surprises that we engineer into your system. The third piece, Doug, is culture. Most important of all, culture must be self-correcting. And so what we do is we engineer and create a culture system before we admit even the first person to our little group. Make sense so far?
Makes total sense. I can imagine people listening to this are going, well, this sounds really interesting, but will it work for my industry? I mean, I do solar panels and I sell those, or I'm a manufacturer, or I'm a software company, or whatever. Can it work for any industry or for most?
No, I'll be honest with you. It can't. And the reason that it can't is because there are some industries that don't require skill. Like, for example, if what you're looking to do is expand your solar panel business, then I would say do more advertising. If you want to have people on the street, then hire kids to go door to door and put flyers in mailboxes or something. But if you have a product that requires skill to implement, then it's perfect. So I'll give you some examples of the clients that I've had. Obviously, software companies are a perfect fit, but we've worked with real estate training companies. We've worked with companies that do relocation of people in their homes. We've worked with companies that train corporate communities on culture. We've created certification for them as well. And amazingly, those are the people who start out by saying, well, I don't understand how this could ever work for us. And within 90 days, they had their first class, their first certification class, and generated $400,000 in 7 days after launching. So the reason this works is because people are starving for ways to create their own enterprise. Now, you might say, well, Mitch, this sounds a lot like a franchise. Truth is, it's very much like a franchise. But here's the key difference. The key difference is that the company that creates it does not have to go through the rigmarole of franchise law. And that's the most important thing. When I work with a client, I provide all the legal documents they need to make sure that everyone they bring on board as a certified consultant is exactly set up so that they do not become a tax liability ever or a legal liability to the company itself.
So the interesting part, and by the way, we're speaking with Mitch Russo, and Mitch runs several brands, but one of them is called Power Tribes. One of them is called Clientfol, FOL.io. And what I find interesting here, Mitch, is the certification component is, I would say, taking an agency and putting one really great step above and beyond what most agencies do. So, the reason I asked the solar panel thing, oh, and by the way, folks, when he's talking about Tony, he's talking about Mr. Tony Robbins, who Mitch and I had the pleasure of working with. And when I was talking about the solar company, the reason I asked that is because I know people would be going, oh, no, it wouldn't work for my industry. But the reality is they could take a component of what you're talking about in the certification. They could create certified solar experts and then let them go and sell their products and services. That's what I would call building an agency model. But what I love about what you've done is you've taken that and then amplified that so that they're actually paying you an annual subscription that you can utilize for marketing purposes to generate more for yourself and for them, as well as a profit center for your company. And you still get the expansion of sales through the increasing the number of sellers that way. It's brilliant.
Yep. And it works. It's practical because we do it all the time.
And a lot of people like to be certified. You had mentioned, you can go see XYZ coach, consultant, whatever, or, methodology, right? I mean, I remember when you and I were together, there was something called the Sedona method, right? And,
Oh, yeah.
I remember Guerrilla Marketing had a certification program, right?
Right.
And the reality is that people love collecting these certificates. So for nothing else, so they get interested and they start doing exactly what you're teaching them to do. And then they realize they can make money out of this thing. Yep. Then that kicks in. So I think that's part of the reason why everybody listening should really perk up their ears and say, okay, let me stay open-minded and see how this could potentially work with my industry or my company, because it wouldn't have been thought of in the software business way back when. But you were able to pull that off and get what? I think you said 350 people that were certified, paying you an annual fee plus selling your software services.
Oh, yeah. Plus attending my annual symposiums. We would generate $350,000 right out of the symposium every single year. And remember now, that's in $1989. So, yeah. I mean, this is and of course with COVID now, things are a little different, but the bottom line is that the concept works no matter what. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that we actually have statistics on what you were talking about a minute ago. So 15% of people who buy certification will never, ever make money with it because, like you said, they want to be an expert in whatever it is that they like, and they want the status of being certified. And they'll pay every year to maintain that. Another 15% of people who buy certification are buying it for a corporation to create an internal system that they could use for their internal clients or their internal users of their stuff. So there are many models and flavors of certification. But like I said before, the most important element of being certified or building a certification system is to make sure that there is an element that requires another human being to help someone implement it to its highest potential.
So, Mitch, I caught something there, what you were saying. Are you saying that you can actually internally have your clientele actually become certified and actually be an internal sales system or an external sales system for your company?
Yes. So not only that, but you can even do it with the government. So, for example, we have one client who I'm not allowed to name has built certification and actually deployed it inside a government agency. And that certified consultant inside this particular agency is now responsible for something like 18% of their government sales budget.
Wow.
And they still pay them every year to stay on board. So this is why it's such an incredible concept, and it works so well, because we mix the combination of entrepreneurship and mastery into the same place. And then at that point, all we're really doing is giving people the literal coloring book, step by step, stay within the lines, you'll make money if you do what we say. And most people who do will make money.
And the cool thing, I think, comparing this to franchising, which, right now out of the gate, you got to have $100,000 actually just to even think about getting the legal done for the franchising in most states,
exactly.
Right? Or more. Also, you're paying as the franchisee a percentage of your overall revenue and sometimes additional marketing spend, monies that are coming out. So essentially, in a franchise, they're paying for this in a certain way, but they're also regulated by the franchise on what they can and what they can't do. And I would imagine with a certification, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they could use that certification component to actually fulfill what you do in your company or what your clients would do in their company. But it also leaves that person open to be able to have other offers as well. It's not like regulating them to, hey, you've got to have X, Y, Z, and that's all you can ever think about.
Correct. Now, I want to add to what you're saying before about franchise. Right now, there's this thing called franchise law, but there's not just one franchise law. There's 50. There's one for every state in the United States. And actually, there's one or two states that don't have any franchise law. But the bottom line is that you have to be compliant with all of them if you're a franchise. So 100K would be getting out easy, getting out cheap on legal expenses to set up a franchise. But the difference here is that, as you said, you are captive. You are a franchise owner, and you have that branding on your sign outside your store or outside your business. You must buy all of your supplies from that franchise. You must pay a monthly or yearly fee plus a percentage of everything you sell. And on top of that, you don't even, in some times, you don't even actually own the business itself. So this is a huge downside to franchising. The upside is that for good franchises, they've perfected their business model. They know it works. You don't have to experiment. They'll give you all the guides, and you just basically implement. And that's great. But you got to want that. But nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Because as a certified consultant for my company, you could be a certified consultant for Doug's company, or a certified, coach for somebody else. It doesn't matter.
I think there's one other thing too, Mitch, that I was catching as you were saying is in a franchise too, you typically have a pretty high overhead in that franchise. In other words, let's take, I don't know, something like, anything, McDonald's, Taco Bell, or, a junk franchise, whatever it might be, right?
Sure.
You've got cost of vehicles, cost of building, cost of insurance. You got all kinds of things. And it's a heavy buy-in to get into some of these huge franchises, if you can get into them at all, right? And the majority of the franchisors are going to require owner occupancy, or the ownership to actually be the person who's actually working in the business. There's very few franchises out there that when I was studying franchises, there were very few out there that would just allow you to be an investor and walk out of it. So there's a very high intensive capital, layout to get a franchise. And as you said, you're captive in that capacity. And the franchise needs to do that in order to keep the brand. But with certification, people can get into certification at a very modest cost. And they don't have necessarily, because they're selling expertise, it's a very high profit margin.
Right.
Doing $1 million franchise and taking home $129,000, or selling $150,000 worth of a high profit that could net out the same kind of money. It really, when we look at cost versus return, unless, the goal is to build a multitude of franchises and try to sell them off, it really, to me, certification even makes more sense.
It does. And again, the other thing about the flexibility here is that when you become certified, you sign an agreement with the company that you become certified with that clearly states that you're A, not an employee, B, you're not even a person, you're a company. So you must be a legal corporation in my world, to get certified, to have certification. Why is that? Because this way we avoid any issues related to taxation, where the state taxing authority might someday come back and claim that you are an employee. But if you're a separate corporation and you treat them as a vendor, that can't ever happen.
So that's interesting, because I know a lot of people, and I know even when we had a company that we were working with, we kind of were subjected to that. You came back, each state would come back, because we had representatives all over the country, actually all over the world. And each state would come back periodically and say, hey, by the way, unemployment insurance, this, that, even though, they could work anything they wanted to work. But still, I have run into this in different businesses and we all have to be careful of this, because each state has its own laws regarding that as well. The bottom line is that if you don't have to deal with that headache, it is a lot easier to run your business than dealing with all that taxation and dealing with multiple governments all across the United States.
Well, to put a finer point on that, there was a point in time when I was dealing with 6 individual states on legal complaints against us related to this unemployment insurance, unemployment law thing, this employment law thing. And that's when I finally figured out how to fix the problem. And that's when we went and implemented a completely different system, which saved us. All of our lawsuits went away almost immediately after that. We never had a problem again. And that's now what I teach my clients to do when they build certification. So they never have any of these types of problems.
So, Mitch, if people want to get a hold of you, I imagine they're listening and they're going, you know, it's a pretty smart guy. I think I want to talk with this guy, and I will vouch for you. He is a very smart guy. What would be the contact information that you would like to leave for everyone?
Sure. First of all, you can go to mypowertribe.com, and that will sort of take you through a quick 3-question test to see if you qualify. And if you do, you have a chance to fill out a form and chat with me. That would be great. Bottom line is that you're always welcome to contact me directly. You can contact me at mitch@mitchrusso.com as well.
And is that RUSSO or RUSSO, correct?
The RUSSO, exactly.
Mitch, before we depart, I'd love to touch on this point. What's the difference between certification and licensure?
Sure. So licensing is a very interesting topic. I've done a lot of work with licensing. Licensing is basically temporarily giving someone a set of rights to use information or a procedure or a process. And once you license something, it has a start, it has a finish, it has a scope, and it has a duration. So licensing is like, let's say you said to me, you know, Mitch, I love how you created this whole system for signing up new people to be on your show. I'd like to license that. I'd say, sure. And then we would figure out how many times you need to use it, in what time frame, in what location, and what, you know, in all of the parameters. We make sure that you have the ability to use it as you need. And then at that point you say, well, okay, Mitch, how much is it going to cost? And I come up with a price and you say yes or no. That's the difference.
And do you think that and again, I know I'm asking the obvious question, but do you think more companies are available to use licensure, or can any company pretty much use licensure? I mean, my answer would be yes, most could. But is it a depends thing again?
Well, you know, licensing means that you have something someone else wants to buy, use, or access. Mm-hmm. So if you have something like that, by all means, you know, figure out a way to license it. You know, I work with clients on licensing all the time. And Doug, so if anyone in your audience would like to have a quick chat, no charge, just get a hold of me and let's talk about licensing.
Sounds great. Mitch, anything you and I have known each other for a long time, so I feel safe asking this question over this podcast. And anything I didn't cover or anything I should have asked you that from your perspective that you wish I had of?
No, I just want to remind everybody that Doug and I live in the most happiest state in the country, and that's Florida. And I know we're both very happy to be here. So come join us in beautiful Florida.
Thanks. Especially in winter, right? I mean, those who don't know.
That's right.
So for those of you who don't know, Mitch and I are both from the New England area, Massachusetts. And, we used to talk a lot about the snowstorms and the sub-0 degree weather, et cetera.
And we don't miss it.
No, not at all. So, all right, Mitch. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you being on here. We'll put everything into the show notes as normal for everyone. And I encourage everybody, go to mypowertribes.com, check out Mitch's software, whether you're selling or you're a coach consultant, or you have a company that has salespeople, or you just want to keep better notes and information on your clientele. Check out ClientFol, FOL.io as well. Mitch, thanks again. I really appreciate you being here. Again, that's mypowertribe.com, www.mypowertribe.com, and ClientFol, FOL.io. Mitch, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Again, you're my first return guest. I don't say that lightly because I just don't let anybody on this podcast because I want to keep the highest quality for people listening. And I know a lot of people got a lot out of this today.
Thank you, Doug. It was great hanging with you again, and we'll do it again soon.
Excellent. Hey, everyone. Was that great or what? Right? We got certification. We got licensure. We even talked about maybe spinning that off and doing agency type of plays. For those of you who go, I don't think certification will actually work for my business, or licensure will work for my business. Well, you know what? There's always variations on the theme. And the reality is, what's really cool about certification is once you know how to do this and you can employ it into your company, you can actually get people to pay you an annual fee for actually, maintaining their certification. People love certification. And the reality is it's more feet on the street out there, bringing more business into your business. Same with licensure and all. I really thought Mitch brought up some excellent points. And I thought one of them was, if you don't have a sales force, you don't have a company. The reality is that I can hear marketers right now going, no, that's not the case. But the reality is that you do need a sales team. You need a sales force in some capacity, because when you go to sell something of a certain size, you're going to have a conversation. It's that simple. So, think through that. And, if certification or licensure makes sense for you, contact Mitch. If you want to talk about how to dramatically grow your revenues and or your profits, increasing those too, reach out to me at doug@businesssuccessfactors.com or DougBrown1234 that's my LinkedIn. And we'll go from there. Hey, thanks for being on here. If you enjoyed this, as always, I ask you, please go up, rate this podcast, rate it as a 5, if you will. And let me know what you want to hear about next. I'll be happy to talk about it. And I'll continue to keep bringing you more great talent to here, and go out and sell something, make some money to your success.